Blood had dried black in the cracks of the pine floor. Fresh blood still shone on the sheet beneath Judson Cole's ribs, dark and wet, where the bear had opened him from shoulder to hip. The little cabin smelled of iron bear grease, wood smoke, and snow pushed under the door in thin white lines. Clara Stanton held the pen, but her fingers would not close right. "Sign," Judson said. His voice was no more than gravel dragged across a board. One eye was swollen half shut. His beard was matted to his throat. Every breath he pulled made a wet sound deep inside him. Beside the bed, 6-year-old Leo stood in his nightshirt, with both hands wrapped around the brass rail. He had not cried since Clara came in. That was worse. His mouth stayed open a little, like he had forgotten how to shut it. The preacher's hand shook worse than Clara's. "Mr. Cole," the old man said, "this ain't a thing to do over blood." Judson's hand jerked. 2 fingers found Clara's sleeve and caught it. "They'll take him." Outside, wind struck the cabin wall and shoved smoke down the chimney. The flame in the lamp leaned flat. Somewhere in the black gorge, a horse blew hard through its nose. Clara looked at the paper on the crate beside the bed. Certificate of marriage. Her name waited there, empty and white. She had signed ledgers all her life. Freight tallies, payroll books, mine accounts. She had signed her name steady while men in fine coats stood over her desk and called theft what they had done themselves. She had signed her last receipt in Philadelphia with no wages paid and no trunk returned. Her whole life had been taken with ink. Now ink was asking for the rest. Judson's fingers tightened. His nails were split to the quick. "Harlan Sterling will be here before sunup," he said. "He'll bring papers. Men. That judge he keeps fed." The preacher swallowed. "His daughter is gone, Judson. Dead women don't stop old devils." Leo's eyes moved from his father to Clara. He had flour on one cheek from the biscuit she had tried to make him eat. It stuck there in a pale smear under his eye. Clara bent toward Judson. "You do not know me. I know what they done to you." Her jaw set. Gossip travels fast in a starved place. Truth travels faster when men want it buried. His chest hitched. The bandage under his ribs filled again, red pushing through white cloth in a slow bloom. Clara put the pen down. Judson stared at it. The room held still. Then he turned his head toward Leo. It took him 3 tries. The boy leaned close, and Judson's torn hand rose an inch from the sheet. It could not reach him. "Boy," he said. Leo stepped in until his bare toes touched the bed frame. Judson's fingers brushed the air near his face. "You mind, Clara?" Leo's chin began to wrinkle. "No," Clara said. Judson's eye cut back to her. She picked up the pen. Not because he had asked right. Not because the world had left her room to choose. Because the boy's toes were blue from cold, and no child should stand waiting for wolves in a house full of grown men. The pen scratched. "Clara Stanton." The preacher bent, signed next. His sleeve dragged through a spot of blood and left a red crescent across the paper. Judson's name was already there, jagged and crooked, written before Clara came, before the bear's fever took his arm. The preacher pressed the seal. Wax cracked under his thumb. Judson shut his eye. Clara stood with the paper in her hand. Wife, widow, stranger, shield, all in one breath. The latch rattled. Everyone looked. No one moved. The sound came again, harder this time, metal snapping against wood. Then a voice outside, thick with cold and money. "Open up, Cole!" Leo's hands found Clara's skirt. Judson's chest lifted once, fell, lifted halfway, stopped. The preacher lunged to the bed. He put 2 fingers to Judson's throat. His mouth opened, but no words came. Only the wind spoke, hissing through the chinks. Clara's grip crushed the marriage paper until the red seal split. Outside, wagon wheels ground to a halt in the frozen yard. Harness chains clanked. Boots hit the ground, one pair, then three more. The latch broke inward. The door flew in hard enough to split the top hinge. Harlan Sterling filled the opening in a buffalo coat black with snow. Behind him stood two riders with rifles and a clerk holding a leather case like it was the holy book. Cold poured over the floor. Harlan looked at the bed. Judson Cole lay still, mouth-parted, skin the color of candle wax. The preacher kept two fingers at his throat, lips moving without sound. Well, Harlan said the bear had better manners than I gave it credit for. Leo made a small sound against Clara's skirt. Harlan's eyes found the boy. They softened for less than a blink, then hardened into ownership. Come here, Leonard. Clara set one hand on the child's shoulder. Harlan looked at that hand as if it were dirt on a plate. Move it. The preacher straightened. Mr. Sterling, there's been a lawful marriage. The clerk opened his case. A dead man cannot make a wife. Clara lifted the paper. The cracked red seal trembled in the lamplight, but her arm stayed up. He was breathing when I signed. Harlan stepped in. Snow melted from his boots and made black spots on the floor. You think ink makes you kin? He looked her from collar to hem. A mine office cast-off hears there's a dying man with land and a child, and she runs straight to the bed. Clara's fingers pressed so hard into the paper that the edge cut her thumb. Judson's chest moved. Once. The preacher sucked in air. Harlan saw it. His face changed the way a butcher's face changes when a hog kicks after the knife. Judson dragged another breath up from somewhere low and broken. His eye opened a slit. Still, my boy, he rasped. No one spoke. The rifles lowered an inch. Harlan leaned over the bed until his coat brushed the sheet. You stubborn piece of mountain trash. Judson's cracked lips pulled back from his teeth. You came. Too slow. Harlan's hand twitched toward his belt, then stopped. Too many eyes. Too much paper. He turned on Clara. You got yourself a corpse that forgot to quit. Don't mistake that for safety. He pointed at Leo. That child belongs to blood. Clara folded the marriage paper once and slid it inside her bodice. He belongs where his father leaves him. Harlan stared at her. The wind blew snow through the broken door and over Leo's feet. Then Harlan smiled without warmth. All right. That was all he said before he left. By noon, Iron Pine Gorge knew. By dusk, every door had learned to shut. Clara walked to Silas Pruitt's store with Leo wrapped in Judson's old coat. The sign above the porch creaked on rusted chains. Flour salt beans, lamp oil, all of it sat behind glass. Silas stood behind the counter, twisting a rag. Clara, he said, not meeting her eyes. I have coin. She laid 3 silver dollars down. He looked at them like they might bite. Can't. Leo's mitten tapped the candy jar. One peppermint stick lay at the bottom, striped red and white. He has not eaten since morning, Clara said. From the back room came a boot step. One of Sterling's riders leaned against the doorframe, chewing a toothpick. Silas whispered, "Take him home." Clara left the coins on the counter and carried Leo back through snow that cut sideways. At the cabin, Judson burned and shook under quilts. The door was patched with a feed sack, but the cold found every seam. Clara boiled the last handful of cornmeal thin enough to pour. Leo drank it from a tin cup with both hands. He licked the rim after. Judson watched from the bed, breath-shallow eyes sharp in the fever. They closed the town, he said. Clara stirred ashes over the dying coals. They closed their faces first. Outside, a hammer rang in the cold. Board over window, bar across door. Iron Pine Gorge was sealing itself away from them. Leo curled beside the hearth, still holding the empty cup. Clara looked at the flour dust in its bottom, then at the black mouth of the stove. There was nothing left to cook. By the third morning, the creek quit talking. Clara heard it before she saw it. The cabin had grown wrong. No thin run of water over stone, no ice crack, no wet sound under the bank, only wind. She took the empty pail and followed the creek bed down past the black pines. The snow there had been trampled by men and horses. At the bend, Sterling's hands had thrown up a wall of rock mud and cut timber across the narrow throat of the water. The creek backed behind it, shining dull under new ice, while Judson's side lay dry as bone. A crow hopped on the dam and pecked at frozen mud. Clara stood with the pail hanging from one hand. Behind her, Leo coughed from the porch. Not loud, just dry. She carried back half a pail of snow and melted it over the stove. It made less water than a woman could cup in 2 hands. Leo drank first. He tried to stop after one swallow, looked at Judson, then looked at Clara. "Finish it," Judson said from the bed. The boy obeyed. The cup knocked against his teeth. That afternoon, Clara boiled a strip of old leather to soften it for broth. The smell filled the cabin, bitter and dirty. Leo held the tin bowl and stared into it like something might rise up from the bottom. Judson watched the door. His fever had burned lower, but it had left him hollow. His beard was streaked with sweat salt. When he moved, the bedropes creaked like they were carrying a dead oak. Near dark, the wolves started. Not close. Not far enough. Their calls ran along Iron Pine Gorge and came back thinner, higher, meaner. Leo slid under the table with his blanket. Clara put the last stick of wood on the fire. Judson swung one leg off the bed. No. He gripped the post and sat up. His face went gray from mouth to brow. Clara crossed to him. "You tear open, you die." He reached for his old rifle. She put her foot on it. His eye lifted to hers. "If you had water under this house," she said, "you'd have fetched it before now. Not under." He took 3 breaths before the next words came. Above. Old Spring past Wolftooth. My trap line. You cannot walk to the stove. Then I crawl. He did. By lantern light, Judson Cole crossed his own floor on hands and one knee, leaving dark spots where the bandage pulled loose. Clara did not help him at first. The sight pinned her to the wall. Then Leo crawled out from under the table and took hold of his father's shirt tail. Judson stopped. "Boy," he said, "you stay." Leo shook his head once. Clara lifted the rifle, wrapped 2 strips of sheet around Judson's middle, and tied them so tight his breath snapped. They went into the trees. Snow creaked under Clara's boots. Judson leaned on a cut sapling, each step a bargain made with the ground. The lantern threw yellow light on bark claw marks, frozen pitch, and the black prints of animals that had passed before them. At Wolftooth, he dropped to his knees beside a flat stone buried under ice. He dug with his knife until the blade bent. Water showed first as a black eye in the earth. Then it moved. Clara shoved the pail under. Spring water struck tin. Leo laughed once, sharp and broken, then clapped both hands over his mouth. Judson turned his head toward the ridge. There's more. Past the spring, under dead brush and snow crust, lay the old trail. Narrow, mean, cut along rock where wagons would never fit unless a man knew every turn. Judson scratched a map into the snow with his knife. Here's our place. Here's Sterling's Road. Here's the gorge mouth. Clara crouched. The lantern shook in her hand. What's north of this past federal rail camp? 40 miles if you take Sterling's Road. 17 through there. Clara's eyes ran over the marks. Camp. Men. Horses. Timber. Meat. Salt. Paymaster. She wiped the snow flat and drew columns with one finger. How many men? Near 600. How often are they supplied badly? The lantern quit shaking. At sunup, a folded court writ was nailed to their door with a railroad spike. The writ gave them 3 weeks. 3 weeks until Oakhaven Court would decide whether Leo Cole stayed with his father's widow or went into Harlan Sterling's house like stock taken for debt. Clara read the paper twice by stove light. Judson sat on the bed with the spring water cup in his hand. His knuckles were white around the tin. "They mean to make law out of theft," he said. Clara folded the writ and set it under the lamp. "Then we make numbers out of teeth." Before dawn, Judson was gone into the pines. He moved like a man held together with rope and spite. Clara watched from the door as he took the old trail north rifle over one shoulder, snow to his knees, breath smoking hard in the dark. He came back at noon with 2 hares, at dusk a deer. By the second day he had 3 men from the rail camp standing in their yard, stamping cold from their boots, while Clara wrote terms on a flour sack with a carpenter's pencil. Fresh meat, split pine, kindling, salted hides, delivered by Wolf Tooth Pass, paid in cash on receipt. No Sterling Road, no Sterling toll. The rail foreman, Mr. Briggs, had coal dust packed into every crease of his face. "You Cole's wife," Clara looked up from the figures. "I am Mrs. Cole." He glanced at Judson's bandaged ribs. "Your man looks half-buried." "Half-buried men still count as men," Judson said. Briggs grunted and signed. The rail camp stank of wet wool, mule sweat, hot iron, and boiled coffee burned black in dented pots. Men lined up for meat with hollow cheeks and hands split from pickwork. Clara sat at a plank table in the pay shack, opened the camp ledgers, and found rot on the first page. Double-billed flour. Lost invoices that were not lost. Payroll names for men buried months ago. She did not raise her voice. She asked for ink, a clean book, and every receipt since October. By midnight, the paymaster stood over her shoulder, with his hat in both hands. "Ma'am," he said, "how much have we been losing?" Clara turned a page. "Enough to feed your camp and buy your shame back." For 10 days she slept in pieces, a quarter hour at the table, half an hour against a flour barrel. Once Judson found her with her cheek on an open ledger, ink on her sleeve, one hand still holding the pencil. He did not wake her. He took the pencil from her fingers, set his coat over her shoulders, and sat in the doorway with the rifle across his lap. On the 12th day, Briggs placed a packet of bank drafts in Clara's hand. "That cleans the books, it starts too. And the rest," she tied the packet shut, "goes where no Sterling man can smell it." In Oakhaven, she opened an account under a name no one in Iron Pine would know. The bank clerk tried to look past her bonnet and count the plainness of her dress. Clara slid the drafts across the counter. His eyes dropped. His mouth shut. Back at the cabin, Leo slept with both cheeks full again. Judson sat by the fire, sharpening his knife with slow strokes. Clara set a small leather book on the table. "What's that?" he asked. "The shape of the world. After Harlan Sterling learns he is not God." Judson's hand stilled. For the first time since the bear, he looked at her, not like a shield, not like a bargain made at death's door, but like a woman who had walked into a burning barn and come out carrying rain. He reached across the table. His fingers stopped short of hers. Clara looked at his hand. Then she laid her palm over it. Outside, hooves crossed the yard. The smell came first. Kerosene. Judson was up before the window flashed orange. Their empty storage shed bloomed fire from floor to roof. Men rode off into the black, laughing under bandanas. Sparks climbed into the snow. Nailed to the burning door was a board painted white. "Court is bought. Bring the boy clean." Oakhaven Courthouse smelled of damp wool lamp soot, and men who had come to watch a hanging without rope. Every bench was full. Harlan Sterling sat in the front row with a silver-headed cane across his knees. His coat was brushed clean. His boots shone. He had brought half the town with him, and the other half had come to see which way power would spit. Leo sat between Judson and Clara at the defense table. His hair had been combed flat with water. His small hand gripped the edge of the chair, knuckles pale as peeled twigs. Judge Abner Pike climbed to the bench with a red face and a mouth set soft from too much rich food. He did not look at Judson. He looked at Harlan first. Then he picked up the papers. This court will decide the proper keeping of Leonard Cole. Judson's fingers curled on the table. Clara set her hand flat over his. The first witness was Silas Pruitt. He stood with his hat crushed between both fists and said Clara had begged credit at his store. Said the Cole place had no flour, no salt, no decent bedding. Said the boy had been seen thin and wild. Clara watched Silas's throat work after every lie. Sweat gathered under his collar, though the room was cold. "Did Mrs. Cole have money?" she asked. Judge Pike struck the bench. "You will speak when called." Silas stepped down with his eyes on the floor. Next came a woman Clara had never seen in a bonnet pinned too neat. She said she had known Clara back east. Said books had gone missing after Clara touched them. Said decent men had learned not to leave a cash drawer unlocked near her. The room stirred. A man laughed once behind her. Judson's chair scraped. Judge Pike raised the gavel. "Sit, Mr. Cole. That woman never seen her. Sit, or I will have you bound." Judson sat. The scar under his bandage had opened enough to spot his shirt dark, but he did not touch it. Harlan leaned toward the aisle. "Mountain men know traps, not truth." More laughter. Leo's chin tucked into his collar. Clara did not turn around. Then Harlan took the stand himself. He laid one hand over his heart like a preacher with clean nails. "My daughter married beneath herself," he said. "God rest her. I tried to save her from it. Now my grandson sits in rags beside a broken hunter and a woman with no name worth speaking." Judson's jaw moved once. Harlan looked straight at Clara. "She married him warm on his deathbed for land and a child she could use. There is a word for such women. Your Honor, but I will spare the boy." Judge Pike nodded as if mercy had been done. Clara felt Leo's knee shaking under the table. She reached down and put 2 fingers against it. The shaking stopped. His breath did not. Judson leaned close, voice cut low. "Do not let him pull you into mud." She kept her eyes on the judge. Pike shuffled papers already marked with his decision. The ink was dry. The ruling had been written before they entered the room. Given the lack of suitable means in the Cole household, he said, and the low character of its present female keeper, Judson rose. The sheriff took 1 step toward him. Clara caught Judson's wrist under the table. Hard. Not pleading. Commanding. He looked down at her hand. She did not look up. The judge cleared his throat. "It is the order of this court that Leonard Cole be remanded into the guardianship of Mr. Harlan Sterling, effective immediate." Leo's chair kicked back. "No." The word cracked out of him. Small, sharp. Every face turned. Harlan smiled. "Come here, boy." Leo backed into Clara's skirt, both fists twisted in the cloth. Judge Pike lifted the gavel. Clara stood. The legs of her chair shrieked across the floor. From beneath her shawl she drew the small leather book and slammed it on the judge's bench so hard the inkpot jumped and spilled black across his ruling. The whole room went still. Clara laid 1 palm on the book. "Now," she said, "you may call me by my name." Judge Pike stared at the black ink spreading across his ruling. It swallowed the word remanded first. Harlan's cane tapped once against the floor. "Remove her." No one moved. Clara opened the leather book. Its pages were ruled neat, each line cut clean as a fence row. Receipts lay pinned inside with red thread. Bank drafts, freight orders, sealed notes, rail contracts stamped in blue wax. Her thumb turned the first page. "This is the supply book of Cole and Stanton Company." A murmur went through the room. Harlan laughed through his nose. "A shed with no roof and a cripple with a rifle ain't a company." Clara looked at him then. "The shed was empty when your men fired it. We do not store meat where fools can smell kerosene." Judson's mouth bent just once. Clara set the first paper before the judge. Federal rail camp at Northcutt. Sole contract for meat split pine kindling hides and winter freight through Wolf Tooth Pass. Signed by Foreman Elias Briggs. Paid in advance on delivery. Renewed for 6 months. Judge Pike did not pick it up. Clara placed another paper on top of it. Camp ledgers corrected. Theft found. Payroll restored. Fee paid to me in bank drafts through Oak Haven State Bank. The clerk at the side table leaned forward before he could stop himself. Harlan stood. You lie. Clara turned another page. No. You taught this town to fear paper. I learned to make paper bite. The room went so quiet the stove ticked loud in the corner. She reached into the back of the book and drew out one folded certificate, thick and cream-colored, with the State Bank seal pressed hard in green wax. Harlan's face lost its shine. Clara held it up. 3 mortgages on Sterling Range land. 2 cattle notes. 1 overdue bond on the South Herd. 1 lien against the slaughter barn. All past due. All sold this week by Oak Haven State Bank. The judge's lips parted. Clara laid the certificate flat before him. Bought by me. Harlan took 1 step back and the bench behind him struck his knees. You haven't that kind of money. Clara's finger tapped the rail contract. I did not. Then I earned it. Judson's hand found Leo's shoulder. The boy stood straight now, eyes wide, both feet planted. Clara faced the room. If Mr. Sterling touches Leonard Cole, files 1 more false paper bars, 1 more pound of flour, blocks, 1 more drop of water, I call every note due by noon tomorrow. She turned back to Harlan. Your land goes first. Then the herd. Then the barn. Then your house. Harlan's mouth worked, but no sound came. His cane slipped from his hand and struck the floor. The silver head rolled against the judge's bench with a clean little ring. Judge Pike shoved the ruined ruling under a law book. This court, he said, voice thin, finds no cause to remove the child. Clara closed the leather book. Leo ran to her and buried his face against her waist. Judson rose slow beside them. His shirt was marked red beneath the coat, but his back was straight. They walked out through the middle aisle. No one laughed. Outside, the winter sun lay pale on Oak Haven's mud street. Harlan Sterling sat on the courthouse steps with 2 men holding him by the arms, his fine black coat spread in the dirt. Leo did not look back. That night, the cabin fire burned high. Judson took the marriage paper from the shelf. The red seal was cracked. Blood still darkened 1 corner. Clara stood across from him, hair loose from its pins, lamplight caught along her cheek. Paper made us, he said. He fed it to the fire. The flames took the old bargain and curled it black. Judson stepped close. What makes us now? Clara asked. He lifted 1 hand slow enough for her to refuse. She did not. His palm touched her face, rough and warm. This, he said. And when he kissed his wife, Leo slept by the hearth with a full belly, while outside the creek ran free again under the ice.